The art of communication. What is it that we're doing that is allowing for others to see it as a beautiful thing when we communicate with wisdom and guidance while others are just free-flowing their thoughts left and right? This is what people are doing. They're planning their gestures. They're planning their hopes and dreams. They're planning their wise words of wisdom, perhaps. These are what many speakers on the screen are allowing for. They're saying, I practice my deceptive tactics, correct? How many of us are aware that there are souls on the line who, in this vision, as Brenda, has been witnessing people trying to unwind the vision of what a deceptive tactic is versus the artistry of communicating within. This is the nature of who she is. She is aligned with the soul of love. And yet, there are other souls on the line who say, I utilize tactics of persuasion, perhaps, who are more in that idea of we dodge the curveballs, right? Brenda knows how to handle the hearts and minds of many, but many are more aware of their own instructional behaviors on how to be in the communication arena. Now, what we would say is that from a soul level, there is an artistry to unlocking the prison of our minds. That is what many who are in the vision of I am beyond help is where some are. Many are thinking that they are not as wise as Brenda, is what some would say. But in her wisdom, she guides them there gently for the most part. However, and this is a big however, it is whether or not those souls who claim that they have their best interest in mind rather than the artistry of who we are as souls, to say that our communication preferences are often being displayed upon the screen. I love going live is where Brenda is, but what happens is when she is knocked down by certain souls on the soul level for feeling free and loose in her vision of my mind is my mastery. This is where most of us are. And others know better. When you have the master of your own soul on the line, you allow for others to create their own. You allow for the nature of wisdom to be seen and heard in its form. And when others are disagreeing with who we are and how we portray ourselves to be, we honor it and assume that they themselves have their own preferences and style of being, perhaps. Or it's the wisdom of another who has stated that the art of formality of vision is where she often lands. My expression is to be cherished is where many land when they go on the other side of the veil. We are thought to be less than in many ways is where some go, due to the nature of who they were when they were in form on this plane. They were vibrating in victimhood or victimizer is what some would say. And yet, the hearts and minds of many come through saying we no longer identify as the victims of who we were when we were in that position on this plane. So we vibrate out of communication in ways in which destroy or destruct ourselves and others. this is what is a fallacy in some people's minds, for they have seen the light. Right? They have seen the darkness within coming through and portraying themselves as that. Perhaps. Aligning with the nature of my heart sings with gratitude towards everyone else's soul expression around me. And within the vision of who I am as soul, I can create that vision very well. What we often miss out on is the expressions of love from others who have been there, done that, and expressed the wisdom of staying free and clear of those who try to create issues for us rather than those who create dimensional spaces of awareness. The spaces of awareness that we inhabit on each plane is a guidepost for who we are as soul. I no longer caretake those hearts that try to create issues for me, is what many would say. How many people are aligning with the idea of, I've got a problem and you're here to solve it, lady? Versus the gentle understanding that not everyone gets their hearts handed to them based on the ideas of what is or isn't coming. When you align with the nature of who we are as souls, you feel the, quote, Jesus soul, correct? How many are feeling that vibration in their heart versus those who say, I just caretake it in my mind most often? It's all within the hearts and minds of many on this plane. Others don't even know who that soul is for various reasons. So what is it that is uniting us as souls? Is it perhaps the love vibration that many are choosing to create from? Or is it the nature of being, which is basically who we are in every breath of every moment? I can be whatever I want, whoever I want, and however I want, right? I can label myself this, that, and whatnot and vibrate in the beauty of it. However, and this is another, oh yeah, this is another big but. But you might want to think about what those labels do for you versus what they don't do for you. They don't grant you heaven, correct? If you're not in the vision of I love who I am, do you get to rise into the vision of heavenly realms? Or is it that there's a restriction in the minds of many for them, that they themselves created for them, not for the whole of humanity? And this is why many are saying, we love you even though you're creating the restrictions for yourselves in your planes. It's a free-flowing state of awareness is where Brenda rides. I love who I am. I set you free from me sometimes. There are those souls that I create with that I've had to let go. Our communication wasn't as strong as what it could have been. And I'm hearing from that soul in this moment, correct? It's more like the heartbreak moments that come to us sometimes as souls, trying to create the heavenly realms that they themselves feel that they need to create in order to make it to some destination that was told to them as a child, perhaps. When, in fact, we are creating destinations unknown all the time, whether or not you align with that idea or not. You see, your soul is full of other realities abounding. You will hear from those souls of your heart as well in many realms that love you for who you are. Others may not be quite so pleasant depending on the attributes of soul that you chose to create with. How many are creating from this place of I love who I am? Set me free from the devil is where some others are in their minds. They had to take that extra step to free themselves from the conditioning of that plane in that moment in which it vibrated. Do you know how many people drop off the screen knowing they create from that vision but don't really buy into it because it doesn't enhance who they are in their minds? It's that sense of other that they portray themselves to be free from, when in fact the field of dreams of love for all souls is part of the answer. It's a solution in some people's minds, but in others we would say it's the answer. It's not about being a problem. It's just an answer to a question that many have. Do you speak to a devil? It's like the devil. Whose vision of it is coming through is what they would soon ask if they really knew what the concept was that people were creating with. Did they place that vision on somebody else for them to be graciously invited in to see, I'm the one that did that vision that hurt so many people that they then claimed that that's what I was? Or was I here to show you the beauty of who you are in your moments of wisdom? This is where many are wanting to go. I want to be the beauty within that allows for my soul to create from the love of all in its wisdom of it. Okay? These are souls that know how to vibrate in the beauty of it without telling people that they're less than, or that they inhabit some scary realm that actually has no vision other than what it was in the moment in which it was placed. So if you yourself are still creating with those moments in space and time, where do you think you vibrate? Many people still vibrate in the beauty of that wisdom because it has those higher levels of love attached to it. So there's something to reach for. It's also the limitations of the mind for many when they come into the nature of soul birth and what that meant for many. Okay, many are saying that my soul is birthing itself over and over again in various realms of love. We highlight who we are and we free ourselves from the limitations of one lifetime and one existence only, because it's not necessary for us to limit ourselves in that kind of extreme expression. Many are afraid of what they've created in other realms and other dimensions, but I'm here to tell you, as a soul who has carried the weight of soul for so long without doing the deeds of reconstruction of other souls' visions, I would say that the more that you deconstruct the vision of love for self by placing it more on somebody else, the harder it will be to rise up in your own vision once you cross over. So this is why we want people to feel the adoration of who they are, the adoration of their own soul's wisdom, and the adoration of who they are. As Jesus would say, it's all about the singularity of each soul. That's his vision, because he didn't want to do the multidimensional understanding for his souls who were so struggled in their minds they needed one destination to go to feel free from the chaos and destruction that they were participating in that moment in time and space. It is still a time-space dimensional vision that people understand and are saying, I highlight his vision as beautiful, and I understand he has transcended the vision of needing to be saved and or to save others. It is his wisdom that allows us to free ourselves from the nature of who we are in our minds as souls limited to one destination only. Do you see how that can be a limitation if you think that you're creating from one place in time and that's all there is, and then the only other option you have due to the nature of who you were was to go to a hell realm or a heavenly realm? And how many people are being labeled as that? And how many people are only owning up to the nature of, do they really feel like they're under the thumb of another soul so much that they take out the measuring stick of soul and say, you didn't make it? This is a follow through with the idea of the ancients of your soul is weighted about whether or not you actually get to enter those heavenly realms or not. Right? The test, the judgment day, filled with all sorts of souls who said, I was aligned with the nature of love for myself and my family most often. And that's where the majority of us land in all reality when we cross over, because it is a doing over that many think that they're doing when they do the idea of reincarnation. Those visions are basically static in vision most often and linear in our minds, rather than happening in this place and time in which we already create. It is the magic moment that people are starting to understand. Okay, you can contact past, quote, past lives. Those are developmental milestones that your soul created for itself in order to be who you are here. That's what many are thinking. It's a developmental milestone. It's an aspect of soul development that creates from itself always. When you come into the vision of richness of soul, it means that we inhabit the beauty of who we are as we are, and we don't need anyone else to grant us the wisdom or the, quote, savior vision in order to be who we need to be as souls. We're not here saying we love everybody the way that they are in their expressions of beatitude, perhaps. But it's our nature of soul vision that allows us to see us for who we are. I love who I am based on various books that I created with, is where many of us are. We're exploring ourselves as souls, but in human form. This is very much true, but there's a misnomer in that, because everyone assumes that the soul within is just who they are as their personality exists. You are more than who you are here. You just haven't received all your wisdom as of yet. When you cross over, you start to receive bits and pieces of your wisdom utilized for who you were and who you will be. You can get there if you want to know where you are riding in the future. You know the vision of what those psychics can do. What happens is when we are aligning with the highest vision of who we are, we can see the whole landscape for the most part and see the beauty of who we are going to be, depending on how far in the future we want to go through. For those who are able to create from the wisdom of generational outputs and inputs, we can see more than what most people could realize. Now, this is why the communication aspect of who we are is very important. Brenda's a wisdom keeper in her mind. There is someone there who would say she knows how to handle just about any soul with dexterity of vision, depending on where they're coming at for her. So she's been getting tested within her fields of victimhood about those souls who claim, I was here to let you know how this area of my life was affected by you, or this area of my life was determined by you. Now, when people start to think that others are to blame for other aspects of their lives, they start to vibrate in the beauty of the victim of who they were, rather than the cherishing of the experience gained that they received by that vision, or by doing that vision. So instead of communicating grace and wisdom, we were starting to create from that place of victimhood, and Brenda understands it. She's like, I understand the difference between that and the soul vision that I create with when I tap into the nature of the love of all. It becomes very mixed in its vision, where people will start to say, oh, but then it must be the most amazing place ever. It is, but the love vibration is more about the heart than the mind. Okay? We have our own thoughts that come through, but it is an understanding that what is best for my heart can often be dismissed by many who say it's always a mindset vision that is coming through. But if you're already within the vision of I am of love and I'm of soul, then I vibrate into a beautiful vision that caretakes the hearts and minds of us here and of many on the other side of the veil. Others are thinking they need help when they cross over. This is a misnomer as well. Others who create that vision that they do might come into contact with the souls who would give them that experience of it. Or they could make different choices, just as we do here, to vibrate out of our own victimhood. If we are indeed of love of souls, we would say we understand your grace and period of pain that you must release from in order to rise up. However, that is a duty for their souls to caretake amongst themselves. We don't have to do those visions here. We know that people create from that vision. We know that there are those souls who are dependent on that vision for their outcomes of pain-free living. We know that many people are looking into that vision as a loving, carefree soul. It can be a bogging down of the witnessing of love for many if they think they are somehow doing something wrong. It's just a misunderstanding on certain levels of love. It doesn't mean it's necessarily right or wrong, but we must ask ourselves in our wisdom, if we can rise here in this vision, why would we assume that others on the other side of the veil, who are now free from the confines of the human body, would have any issues creating from the victimhood in which they thought they vibrated when they were here? Okay, those are often thought forms that people are creating with rather than the reality of who they were as souls. Or it could be that those are the nature of those, quote, ghostly visions that have chosen to give people those experiences who want to have those experiences. Okay, and that's the nature where some will say, I never did want it, but I experienced it. It's a tuning it of the radio of soul that others are going to experience. Adjust your frequency band and you don't have to worry about the nature of possession or the dealing of it. Highlight your vision as I'm aiming for my own soul, as those souls know how to do. I can guarantee you they know how to aim for their own souls. They're just trying to help us here gain experience in how we create from various realms of love of life, right? Liberty is where Brenda is. She's with Thomas Jefferson in his mind most often, caretaking the hearts and minds of those souls who were gratitude friendly for the vision of love that they received when they themselves understood the nature of who they were in this realm, and say, I fly free from the vision of who she was, because she's still there in her honoring of all. It just doesn't always feel like it from their perspective, because in her vision she says, I cannot do the love of all that has certain topics labeled as who people are, or certain identities. Those identities are often in conflict with who the nature of we as souls are, right? If I'm saying I'm something, then that is what I start to create from. So it's love for that vision of it, but it doesn't mean that that vision doesn't exclude others from that vision. There are plenty of people who are claiming they're of the love of all, but they won't include the LGBTQ plus community in their visions of it. Or is it just that I love them, but not their behaviors? But do you really love them? Their expressions are soulless, correct? Or are they souls creating from the beauty of who they are? So you might want to think about the nature of what your love of soul is, because that's the nature of who we really create with. And it's the nature of humanity that Brenda creates with. Now, when she goes to the nature of the consciousness of the planet, that's a very different vibration that she loves and adores. And it's her heart that gets her there, because she's of wisdom of animals as well as plants. She talks to her plants and lets them know she's taking care of them. And she has the wisdom to communicate not only with herself and her soul, but animals and plants that are around her. But it's done on an internal vision most often, And she does indeed receive guidance from her own soul's wisdom about what is indeed going on with certain animals or the plants in which she is vibrating with. The plants doesn't happen so much because she's not really interested in the botany aspect of who she is creating with, okay? It's not a who, it's a what, but it's the consciousness of those visions. So with that in mind, we'd like to round this up with the nature of communication from the soul level. It doesn't mean it replaces the beauty of who we are in our minds here. It means let's try to do better when we're on our way. Okay, we're on our way to being the beauty of who we are, is what some would say, rather than focusing on the nature of themselves as beautiful and wise here. Once you start to go into the beauty of I'm soulless, that's where some are. They would say others are soulless. And what that means is it's a degrading of the nature of who we are as souls in form. Even those ET visions that others are claiming would say that is not soul. You have not understood the nature and the caretaking of our hearts for those who claim they've come across soulless visions. If they're thinking that a soul is a physical attribute, they are not exactly in that wisdom yet. Okay, others are in the idea of I want to bypass the nature of soul and I want to go to Jesus, who is no longer in form. But if his soul is still rising, where do you think he might be going? To his heavenly realm, right? Or did he already land there and is now caretaking the hearts of many in his own way, in his own vibration that he created from? It depends on the perspective that many are creating from. It's an honest assessment that many here are trying to create those forms for him. They are thought forms of Jesus that many are actually working with because his nature was never there in the first place, is what some would say. Brenda knows different. It's just that it wasn't exactly portrayed in the way that it most likely happened. And his soul is very strong and wise, and it is not needed to be thought of as superior in its wisdom, because it is more about the soulless souls that others are claiming she works with, because they think that their own soul would say X, Y, or Z if it was to be proven to them that she has their wisdom. Mack truck is going to come through for someone on the screen. So with that, I want to say thank you for watching. I hope your days are filled with the wonder and magic of who you are. Please stay in the peace and love vibration for many of us, if at all possible. We're feeling the disconnect from several family members who are more in alignment with the political. It's like those ideologies are what's keeping us landed here in many ways. So we're not going to sit there and have the discourse that those who participate in political ideologies are somehow less than. We'll talk about that in another episode. So as always, with our love, stay free and clear of the vision of discourse of plenty. This is your nature. This is your love being handed to you for you. You are wise and soulful. This is what we are all granted. Have a great day.